as you moved on and worked with Steven Spielberg on Jurassic Park, suddenly all this new stuff arrives, as do a lot of amazing characters or creatures that aren't necessarily there in the room with your actors.
Yeah, that's true. I hate to disillusion you all, but those dinosaurs did not exist, except in the case of some rubber ones.
So within that, as I was saying before, the Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park really stands this test of time because it didn't rely entirely on that. There was this very cool effect. There were these new visualizations that were coming in, but the film stayed very true to the fundamentals of visual storytelling and using those fundamental camera moves to tell us what to look at and what to feel. So I know we're going to look at another clip in a moment when a couple velociraptors come searching for a couple of kids. But can you talk a little bit about what it was like to sort of take on this thing that it wasn't even as if you had to wait for the dailies. You weren't going to see what this thing looked at for a long time.
Exactly. That was one of the aspects about it that we found disconcerting. But the initial vision for dinosaurs in Jurassic Park was stop motion. And I saw the tests, and they were, we've all seen stop motion. Some of it's really pretty good, and then some of it is not. It was going to be kind of the same thing we'd seen in movies since 1,010,000 BC, whatever it was. So we are sitting at a conference table at Spielberg's complex, and this was going to be this little dinosaur movie that Universal said he could make. And he said, well, I think it could be something, but it was, it had a budget. And so we're sitting there, and we were told that he could have 150 of these stop motion special effects shots. That was the budget. And so we would be sitting there, 4 or 5 of us around the table, and he'd be going through the storyboards. It was very, very meticulously storyboarded for obvious reasons. And he would go through and say, okay, yes, oh, you know what we're missing? We're missing the fact that the dinosaur comes up into frame and starts to run. How many shots is that? And the guy would say, 152. And he would say, okay, we need it. Let's cut out something else. And he was determined. So as we're doing that process, Dennis Murin from ILM, Lucas's company, is there at the meeting, and he says, Stephen, we think we can make these dinosaurs in the computer and not do stop motion. And he says, great. Well, show me what you mean. He said, well, we haven't done it yet, but wait here. So he came back a week later, and he had a wireframe, crude, animation, but it was incredibly effective. There was all this weight and movement and follow through and all of the stuff that animation can do. And Steven said, well, that's good, but it's just a wireframe. It's just like lines. What about the skin? And Dennis said, aha, wait right here. So he came back a week later, and it had a gray skin, but it was actually pretty good. And Steven said, well, that's okay, but it looks like it's made out of clay. What about like light and stuff and color and scales? And Dennis said, wait right here. So he came back another week later, and there was a dinosaur with some skin and everything, and Steven said, okay, that's good enough for me. Let's commit to it. So we were off now on this journey, and I had done Roger Rabbit before that, so I was familiar with compositing animation into live action, How do you create that illusion? So I was quite delighted with this opportunity. And so we went off on the journey, not knowing where we were going. And, you know, what I think I find kind of rewarding about it is the fact that all of these years later, the clip you see and the sequence, and if you watch the movie, it holds up. You know, there are no weird matte line artifacts and contrast differences and all of the things that show up when you look at an old, you know, film that was the first to use blue screen or whatever. It still holds up, and you know, it's something that you know, I can feel proud of. I was part of it. I wish I could say I did the whole thing myself, but nobody did. There were so many people involved.
Do you remember the experience of, or when was it that you saw the scene itself for the first time? Where I guess it's the film itself, but
well, we did a couple shots and then rushed them off, and they were relatively simple. The shot where the brontosaurus is eating leaves off the tree, it was the first one, which was appropriate because it's the first shot our characters see, and there's this sense of awe and wonder, and Sam Neill is crying and all of this stuff. And we saw that one first, and it was quite amazing. They evolved even better after that. So, you know, there was some talk about, oh, well, maybe we should go back and redo it. But no, it was really quite impressive. And we saw that at Daly's one day. We were looking at film, and Dennis said, you know, I got a surprise. There was no waiting. He said, run it. And so we saw the clip, and it was astounding. We knew we were on a new journey.
yeah, and that gave you the trust. You sort of knew that what you were making, what you were giving to them, was going to be taken across the finish line.
Yeah, you know, it's important if you're doing something new to see something and then be able to commit to it, you know, wholeheartedly, as opposed to saying, oh, that sucks, you know, and now you're feeling, you know, a little dismayed about what lies ahead. You know, we saw that and said, oh, great. And so in each case, we just, you know, added more and more.
Well, I know that, I mean, so many folks who have seen Jurassic Park, I know for me, seeing that scene and awaiting, because it's a little ways into the film before you get to see that moment where the Brachiosaurus walks across. And it was just, for me, one of those moments where what I'd always imagined as a kid was able to be visualized in real life. And that's shocking when that happens in film, because you're so used to saying, yeah, I guess that's what I imagined.
Uh-huh.
That was one of those moments that nailed it.
No, and I think that was the great appeal of the film, is it fulfilled people's expectations in the you know, sometimes, you know, I'll say, oh yeah, I worked on Jurassic Park, and someone will say, oh, that was one of those dinosaur movies, wasn't it? And you know, I avoid saying, no, it was the dinosaur movie. But you know, it was true that you know, we were off on this journey, and it has held up, and you know, people still watch it and believe.